Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Anna McNaught, and I will be your host today. And today I am joined by Toren Reaves from Casa Design. Welcome, Toren. How are you doing today?
Doing super well. Thank you so much for having me. This is always a really incredible opportunity, and I don't take it for granted. And I'm super excited to work with you guys today.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here. And just Torin and I were chatting a little beforehand. And so I know that he has a lot of good things in store for us today where we can all learn a little something from everyone. But first, just want to give a warm welcome to everyone in the chat. Hey, Cody. Hey, Sean. Hey, Voodoo. So nice to see you all here. Hey, Steve. How's it going? Nice to have all of our usual Adobe people in the chat. And welcome all of you newcomers on Behance and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not done so already, and come over to Behance and join in on the chat today so that you can ask Toren some questions while we get to work. So Toren, let's just pop it over to you. I'd love for you to give us a little introduction and let us know what we're going to be working on today.
Yeah, so it's funny. Tomorrow will be the start of the fourth year of me owning Casa. I started back in 2020. I had worked at a few marketing agencies before, but always in like an analytics position and never really doing anything creative. But that was what I always wanted to do. So when I branched out on my own, it was like, okay, here's an opportunity to kind of create the type of work that I wasn't seeing being created at the agencies I worked at, and just kind of industry wide. I don't have to tell you, but it's a very homogenous industry that we're in as professional creatives. And so I think Casa was very much born out of what wasn't in front of me as a consumer and as a professional, and somebody who wanted to create. And so hopefully today, as I mentioned before, the stream serves less as a tutorial and more so as like a means of validating people who come from different approaches. You'll find that my style is very iterative, and hopefully a little bit unique. And anybody who's starting their own brand or has one going or is ruminating on what they want theirs to be, wherever you are in your journey as a business owner or as a creative, like just keep going, and what you're doing is valid. So hopefully today kind of serves to speak to that.
I love that. I think that's so great. And I feel like a lot of people will resonate with that. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do we want to just hop right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so today's focus is going to be doing branding for your social media feeds. And again, like I really wanted to be mindful of where people might be within their own creative career. And I wanted to take a second to just kind of talk about like how I started with my own branding, because it's come hopefully a pretty far way in a relatively short amount of time. But I remember as a kid, I've got like a genius older sister who's way cooler and funnier than me, and just beloved. And before she moved away to Philadelphia for college in 2002, she had this awesome like collage mood board in her bedroom of all these really cool high-end fashion magazines. And the Vogue covers always really stuck out to me because they were so simple but bold and not pretentious, but like very confident. And when I started Casa, I knew that like those covers were something that I had in mind that was like an end goal for me, where I wanted to be able to have a template where I could post to social, and still kind of have that same reverence for the work that I was creating that I felt Vogue had, and what they were doing with their endeavors. And so this is literally like, these on the right hand side of the panel are the first like sort of social mock-ups that I ever came up with. And you can tell like they're messy, but the hope was like I had being sent, or I was taking from clients that were all different resolutions and all different aspect ratios, and I needed to be able to plate them all like in a similar way. So I had this frame where I could kind of crop within the 1:1 aspect ratio for Instagram and kind of control that differing resolution. And because my style is so iterative, like I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew kind of where I was hoping to take it to. and I started looking at like what colors speak to me, what images do I have that have resonated with me, and just kind of kept chasing the stuff that was thought-provoking. And I think that one of my favorite exercises to do with students that I mentor is to just sit them down and say, listen, like, you are constantly inundated with new content all the time. So if anything stuck out to you and resonated with you and you saved it, that says something, like that should be valued. And in my own personal brand, while I appreciate getting a ton of likes on photos, it's really the idea of like how many people are saving stuff and want to spend time with the stuff that I'm posting. Like, that's so flattering to me as a creative, that somebody wants to sit down with anything that I've created for more than just however long it takes to scroll past it. And so I'm like a huge data hoarder and have had images like saved aside since like 2006, and all that informed where I was taking the logo until I finally kind of fell upon the reversing it, or rather flipping it upside down, because I love skateboarding videos. I can't skate worth shit, but my brother can. Another sibling who's cooler and much more liked than I am. I'm like the least talented of my siblings, which is awesome. But he really got me into skate videos, and I love the dark slide. I just thought that was such a clever name and maneuver. So that's what I named my first like big, like kind of concrete vision of a logo for. And then from there, I just did this thing where, again, in 2020, there wasn't really much access to doing much photography for clients at the pace that I needed to kind of develop a brand identity. So going through all those images that I was speaking to before, I just developed this template, and I would spend hours going through all those pictures that I thought were thought-provoking and try to place them meticulously into this framework in a way that I thought was like resonant the same way that the Vogue covers were. I don't know if I ever got there, but after doing it for months and months, I finally got to a place where I felt like I could go out with the camera and come back with something that was recognizable within that vein. And so if you're the type of person or in a position in your life right now where access to a camera isn't necessarily something that you can do, that doesn't make you wanting to develop your brand any less feasible. And so that's kind of what I wanted to start with today, and then jump into some original photography of mine and kind of show you guys where I've taken my branding exercise over the last few years.
That sounds perfect. And I love the way that you laid this all out, so you can really see you working through the ideas from the Vogue covers that you showed to kind of figuring out what typeface you were going to use and how you're going to style it. And then even having the skateboard incorporated in there, showing exactly how your brain decided, let's flip this upside down. Like, that's so interesting to me to see the process actually laid out, because we don't often get to see all of that, like, inner workings of someone's brain.
No, I really appreciate that. That's what you always like hope to do. Like, whenever I put together an editorial for my own brand, I like make it a point to not have any sort of like exposition or caption on it. Like, I really hope that somebody can kind of scroll and just see like where I position things, get something out of it, and whatever the reader pulls from whatever I present, like, that's totally valid, even if it wasn't intended, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so from there, let's hop into Lightroom. And here's some photos of a dear friend of mine, Jamie, who was nice enough to let me take some photos of her wearing a shirt that I came up with. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Nope. It's Jordan Peele's. Yeah. So it's Jordan Peele's most recent movie, and there's a moment, it's like 2 seconds long, where Kiki Palmer does, it's called like the Akira slide, and it's from one of my favorite animes ever, and it's like the first live action iteration or like reference to this very particular iconic scene from an anime. And I was like in the theater, I was like, I have to go home and like turn this into a t-shirt. So I took the Akira font and typeface from the poster and then kind of juxtaposed it with the slide, and was like, okay, here we go. Like, it's a little reference to the reference that's a reference. And then I dragged my friend out into the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. I was like, get into the car right now. I've got a size medium. Please trust me. And we drove around for like 2 hours. And I'm very grateful that she was so willing and trusting of me to take photos. But I wanted to kind of walk through my selection process of like a raw photo, and how I kind of bounce between Lightroom and Photoshop. I know that you're a Photoshop expert, so it'll be cool to hear your input as well,
Yeah.
and to get some feedback from you as to some approaches that might be a little bit more efficient than the ones I have now. But
For sure. Yeah. And super fast. Voodoo Val in the chat is saying how much she loves Akira. She mentioned it before. That's one of my favorite anime films. And then as soon as you said that, I knew she would perk back up again. Akira is amazing. Yes. So I think she's gonna love this.
No, I love it. And there's like a lot of work from Japan, especially like if you play video games at all, there's a game called Persona 5, and it's just one super bold decision after another, from like how they have like the menus and like the loading screens and the music and the color palette. And I'm so inspired by the confidence it takes to make those like really bold different decisions, let alone to do so in the manner that's like congruent like at the end. And so that's been recently like a really big I guess like personal North Star for me, where it's like, okay, I want to start making more sort of out there decisions, but with intention to have like an overall vision kind of feel like a congruent thing, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's super interesting. A really good way to kind of rethink things too.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. So yeah, Akira rocks, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's super out there. But yeah, when I'm going through photos, I know like they say like directors tell the same story every movie. I think like as a photographer, I'm trying to capture like the same expression every photo, which has always been like whatever emotion like a sigh of like relief or like an exhale is. And so at any photo that I'm looking at that like typically kind of jumps out at me, usually is pretty similar in that endeavor. Maybe the person who's doing it or how they express it is unique, but that's like, I don't know why, but and I'm not like a tense person, but whenever I see that, just like that like release of whatever it is someone's carrying, it really resonates with me, and I'm always eager to try to capture that if I can.
Yeah.
So going through these, like Jamie has such wonderful expressions, and I tell her this all the time. She has a perfect nose, and I hate her for it. So it's like, can you not can something be weird about you? And she's really, really great in that endeavor. And to be around her, you can tell she's always thinking about something at like a million miles per hour. And so you get this like these little moments where like this photo where I'm like not even there, despite holding a camera like and crouching like right in front of her, like she's thinking about whatever is on her mind, and very intently. And it's it really lends itself to the sort of photos that I find thought-provoking.
Yeah, that's super cool.
But yeah, so I think when it comes to picking one of these, I'm gonna go with, I like this one. She's got her chin up a little bit more than here. Both are great, but she just seems like she's, I don't know, a little bit more confident in this one, just by virtue of the fact that she's looking up a little bit more. She probably is just adjusting to the fact that that shirt was a little bit big on her. And I always like loose fitting t-shirts. Like whenever I buy a t-shirt for myself, I get like a double XL because I just like that.
Me
like
too.
boxy shape. Yeah. They're comfier. No one wants to have like a skin tight shirt on them all day.
No.
At least I don't.
I'm the same way. Even with sweatshirts, I'm like, I want it to be huge.
No, it's a good goal to have when sweatshirt shopping.
Yes.
But usually, like when I like start out in Lightroom, sometimes I'll just bounce like right into Photoshop. And hopefully that pulls it up. It's going to download the original real quick. Yeah, and then I'll usually play around with like the curves a little bit in here. The reason why I know you can do it in Lightroom, but sometimes I want to have like different curves for different objects. Like, you know, if I want to select the sky specifically, I'll go over to like the select and go to sky. Yeah, and then hold on. I'm really, really excited for, yeah, here we go. Perfect. And now I'll jump on over and just kind of play around with like, well, what happens, like, again, if I just click different things? And if I find like, oh, I don't like that effect at all, I'll just Control Z and go back. I've had a lot of success lately with playing around with like the midtones to have something kind of jump out at me. But my approach really is just kind of poking and prodding. And if I find something I like, I'll like duplicate the layer and then I'll go back to it. When I was like first learning Photoshop, one of the sentences that like really oriented me moving forward was there's like a YouTube video, and the person who was doing a tutorial said that like everything that you're doing in Photoshop is with the intention of not being destructive. So you can go back and edit stuff later. And that was like a huge epiphany for me, where it's like, oh, it's okay to have 19 layers of like almost the same exact thing, and I'll come back to it later and figure out which one I like.
Exactly.
But yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And then she's a little dark, so I might select the subject. I always click refine hair. I'm not even certain like as to what it does all the time, but it makes me feel like it's refined now.
Yes, exactly.
Before it was good, but now it's refined. And then, yeah, I might make it like another mask for just her. And then just kind of play around with lifting her up in a way that doesn't make her feel like superimposed. And sometimes like with certain photos, I know that the defaults for the lights, mids, and darks are like certain hex codes. Every now and again, I'll go in, and if I double click, you can change it. And I'll start with something that's like a little bit off-white and just go, okay, what's going on here? And I don't always love it, but if I select like a brighter point, it gives it like a different, I don't know, feel. Like I like the way that those play sometimes. And then I'll even play around with like the blending modes and see like maybe I want to lower the opacity of this and just kind of have like the same effect but to a lesser extent. And it's really like, this is really kind of how I approach just this first level of like where are like the light levels for the subject and the background and whatever other elements that I find interesting.
Yeah, that's a great technique.
Yeah, let's see if I can. And then even within here, like I might add this mask to the selection if I really just want to get her skin tone. You can do that within here, like do like a color range or a focus area. I actually find that Lightroom is really good at doing this like quickly. Like in Photoshop, of course, like you can like really get granular like with what hex code like you want or what range of colors. Sometimes it's like I'm just trying to get to the like I could spend 8 hours on this and like be upset, or I could just have Lightroom go, Toren, like I've got you, bro, and kind of take me to the next area. But yeah, I'll keep it around here for now. I don't want to edit too much before we get to the next thing. And sometimes like I'll save this as a temporary file, and then I'll go back and like save it again as like a PSD, just in case I turn my computer off, because I don't want to lose all the edits that I've made.
Right.
But we'll close this, and it should pop back up and populate into to Photoshop or into Lightroom. Pardon me.
Nice.
Yeah, and then we'll go back and do some mask stuff. And I think this is a recent update where when you're going for masks, it will select like a person and be like, oh, do you want, like what portion of this person do you want to edit?
Yeah, it's so nice. Like such a game changer.
Yeah, it's wild how far this has come in like the last 2 years alone.
I know. I remember having to like fully select the person, you know, and then select their skin.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And then like whenever like you use like the lasso feature, like back in like the like mid 2000s, it was like always kind of jaggy. Like it was hard to smooth out the lines. It was like very, like it looked like I cut it with like a pair of scissors. Yeah. So they've done a lot to help people like myself out.
I know.
Yeah, I don't want to increase the exposure. Maybe I just want to lift these shadows a little bit.
Yeah, kids will never know the problems that we went through.
They have no idea. They have no clue. And then I think I've got that dynamic like range between how light she is versus the background in a place where I like it. And now it's like, okay, like let's put a little spin onto this. And I usually start with, if I'm out of the masks, I'll go over to like the color grading and I'll go, okay, like what happens if I drag this way? Or what happens if I just like shift this all the way to the left? Like, what do I get? Like that really is like my whole approach. I really like that actually. I usually play with like the shadows and midtones, but I don't know if I want that. Yeah, I don't want that either.
It looks so extra good on my laptop over here. I have like the monitor screen for where I have you right now, and then I have my laptop projecting it with the retina display and everything,
Oh,
and it looks
nice.
incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like that's always like what's tough. Again, like when you're making stuff for social, like whatever you create is going to look different to the person who's seeing it because you're seeing it on a different device.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to control for that. And like I wonder if you've ever run into this where like because I didn't have an iPhone until recently. I was color grading and the client looked at the color grading on their like new iPhone with like the retina display, and I
Hmm.
was editing on like an HDR screen but with like very different values, and they were like, this is not looking like the way that it's looking like on your end. And we sat next to each other and like compared, and it was different enough where it was an issue. Have you ever run into that?
Yeah. Never like in that case where it's like with a client, which is super nerve-wracking because you're trying to
Yeah.
make it look a certain way and you want to make sure that what you're presenting is what you're seeing, you know? And
Yeah.
but I've definitely had that where I'll be editing something on my computer and then I'll go and post it on Instagram or something. And I'm like, why is this so dark? It looks
Yeah.
terrible. This is not what I was seeing at all. And it's like the iPhone couldn't pick up the areas of light. And so that's definitely a problem. I don't know if anybody has solutions to that yet.
Yeah, like it would be pretty cool if there was a way to kind of like look like have like a simulated version of the color values within Lightroom. Like what would this like a preview almost of what device? But again, like there are so
Right.
many phones and so many iterations of each that can be pretty tough.
Yeah.
Oops, switch to the wrong photo. So yeah, this is getting to a place where it's like, okay, this has something to say, and I'm enjoying it. I might lift a little bit because I'm worried that on some screens it may not look great. But yeah, and then maybe with the whites. Awesome. And now I've got it to like a place where I'm feeling good about it, but it doesn't have, I mean, besides like the logo on the shirt itself, it doesn't have the branding in the way that you know, I'm hoping to kind of demonstrate today. And so I'll pop back into Photoshop with this new version. And then I'm going to duplicate this into this template that I've made. And this is like always one of my favorite parts of duplicating because I never know where it's going to place the image. And sometimes in that randomness, you end up with something really cool,
Mm.
um, where it just kind of crops in a way that's like, oh, like that was not at all intended. But I like the way that ended up working. Oh, I seem to have hit it behind an invisible layer. Okay, so this is the template, and it's set to the aspect ratio of an Instagram portrait, which I think is 1080 by like 1350. I have this much larger because if I feel like if I give Instagram something that's that resolution, it's going to crunch it down to something even lower, and then that's going
Yeah.
to break my heart. So I
Yep.
usually start a bit larger. Yeah, like have you ever had that where you're like, I'm going to like be very granular about what I put in here, and then Instagram just doesn't upload it correctly, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I just ruined everything.
Yep. And then you're like, what was the point of that? Because that was definitely just for Instagram. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
I should make this a huge wall print.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been playing around with like, okay, how do I add my branding to a photo in a way that's hopefully as thoughtful as the photo that I, you know, took. And like, you know, Jamie was kind enough to come out with me and lend herself to a photo shoot that was very impromptu. I kind of want to honor and like respect all the effort that went into that when I like put my own branding onto something. And I think sometimes it can be not necessarily easy, but like the quicker option to just say, here's my logo on it, and then there you go. And some clients kind of just want that. I try to go the extra mile. Like if I feel like, hey, we could actually serve this project a little bit better by being more thoughtful or being more intentional with what we're doing and where we're placing it, I'll like try to present them both options. And sometimes that plays and sometimes it doesn't. But within my own branding, it's been pretty cool to just kind of have carte blanche with what I'm doing in my own endeavors. And I'm sure you've worked with plenty of brands that have very strict brand guidelines, like these are the logos you can use at this aspect ratio, these are the colors you can use, this is the ad copy that goes with the photo that has X and Y. And like I was thinking last night about like what would be my own brand guideline, like if I was a client or of somebody else's. And for me, it's just all about like the thoughtful expression of authenticity. Like if you're doing that, like you can throw my logo onto anything. Like I don't even really care what the logo looks like. Like if your approach was to really get at the heart of whatever it is that you're pursuing, like that to me is more than enough. And for some clients, like they really legally, like if you've ever worked in like medical, like they've got very strict guidelines.
Right.
And being esoteric, like with like dental stuff isn't very appreciated. But with what I'm doing, it's been really, really cool to kind of have that, and it's a real privilege. So speaking to the segment of the audience that's there in their own personal branding, like enjoy this, like this is the best stuff, like you're your own playground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now I'm gonna move around the 2-3. Yep, that works. And I have my little tagline is create and encourage. And I'll always play around with like where the stuff goes and what the colors are. And then what else do I have hidden behind? I tried to be good and to have groups. This is a first for me. You can tell like I can't orient myself because I don't know what I'm looking at.
I know. I know, I'm the exact same way.
I tried so hard. But yeah, so I'm going to select Jamie again and see. I always like having like a mask of the subject to kind of reference to. So we'll select, I'll do inverse, and then I'll make a new mask. And then I'm actually going to disable it for right now. I'm going to save that for later. And then when I go to, like, let's say I'll go to my libraries, and it comes time to like place like an actual logo. I've got tons of little logos. Like, I don't know if you're the same way, but like I love like every like 8 weeks, I love just sitting down and like redoing my logo from like the ground up, or just like if I see something that inspires me, just kind of having like different iterations of it. Like I find that exercise cool. So fun. Yeah, because it's like I kind of already have like an established feel for the brand, so it's now like, okay, like how can I play with that with different fonts and layouts and whatnot. And so one that I really love is this wave that I came up with, and it's been fun to just sort of like integrate like, well, where is this going? And so again, I might have it, this is tricky, where it's up here at the top. And again, it's maybe covering her face, but that's why we have this layer mask. And I'm gonna drag this puppy up to whichever layer has that logo, if I can find it again. Artwork 41, perfect.
Yeah.
And so that's a really easy way to just kind of like, if you've ever, again, like the Vogue covers from the start of the stream, how you have like the subject in front of the logo, but it's like in between, like that parallax. I know, like when I was first starting to learn Photoshop, I spent like 6 hours trying to figure out what that effect was called. Like, and then once you know how, it's like, oh, it's really straightforward as to how you do it. But yeah, I had somebody reach out maybe 2 weeks ago, and they asked you like, how do you do that in Photoshop? Well, now it's on the stream.
Nice. Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things that packs such a big impact, but is like pretty fairly simple to do. You did that in 2 clicks maybe. And it immediately makes you be like, wait, what? How? Like tricks your brain.
It really does. I'm going to, so I have this as a like a vector that's saved in Illustrator, and I could like double click it and pop up Illustrator and edit it. But sometimes I don't want to have to keep bouncing in between Illustrator to add like a different color variant onto the logo or the vector itself. So I'll actually end up just selecting it with the selection tool. And then I will make a new solid color layer, and I'll play around with something fun. And then I'll add that layer mask up to this next layer. So I'm gonna enable this. If it lets me drag and drop. No, I don't wanna do that. Hold on, maybe I have to rasterize this. So I'll duplicate before I commit. And then, there we go. And then I should add it, nope. Let's see here. No, that was the exact opposite effect of what I wanted. Let's get this.
It's so funny in Photoshop how sometimes you end up like confusing yourself with it, you know?
That's every day for me. It's just a constant stream of genuine hurtful confusion.
I know. And it's like, you know exactly what you're trying to do, but then you're like, wait, is it this? Does it need to go on top or under or next to?
So now we kind of have Jamie over it. And then sometimes I want to play around with like, I really do love like the different blending features just to see like, okay, like what just comes out of playing around with this. That's actually pretty cool. I've been obsessed with like high saturation, high vibrancy blues lately. I don't know where it's coming from, but I've been having like a blast with it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And then sometimes like when it comes to the caption on the bottom, this is another thing I've been playing around with, is like going back to like those original case social posts that had like the framework in it, like the box. I've been playing around with like having something similar to that, where I'll take the selection tool and maybe I'll make like a pseudo frame that incorporates the font. And then I'll select the inverse and then do like another like color fill with something different, and just go, okay, like maybe this will help sort of orient the assumed reader or audience like to where I want them to like read and like look. Or sometimes like, you know, it can be tough to integrate the text onto a photo, like, and just not have it look awful. And so this has kind of been a workaround for me lately to kind of incorporate some more stuff into whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm not in love with this color, so maybe we go back to F5. And I'm also not really in love with this selection, so we're gonna delete that layer mask out of the solid color. Right to here. Maybe I'll go this way. Cool. And now we have this.
That's cool.
Thank you. One. Let's see what happens if I go over the frame. But blend any differently? Yeah, it's not coming out the way I would hope. And because the 2-3 for the text appears also blue, I kind of want to play around with this font as well. I think that white plays, but maybe I go back to that yellow that I had before. And just having stuff that kind of jumps out a little bit. This is like, you know, genuinely my favorite stuff.
Yeah.
I might move this back to the selection and do another. We'll do brightness and contrast because she seems a little. Go back to the color fill. I'll duplicate the layer just to give myself different options, because I need to like A/B test whatever it is I'm doing. Like sometimes I'll just go to black and go, oh, actually, I don't hate that.
I know. That's the problem I have, is like trying different things. I end up wanting to use all of them. They all end up looking really cool, you know?
It's like,
You're
oh,
like, oh,
shoot.
yeah, which direction do I go with this? And you have 20 versions of it.
Yeah. But that's kind of like the fun where you're like, okay, like I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for a while, like when I was first starting to do branding stuff, like I was following a lot of Instagram accounts that were like very minimalist. And I think that stuff is awesome. But after a while, it can almost feel like a little like algebraic, where
Yeah.
like you've taken away so much that I'm like losing things to grab onto. And the people who do that style really well, like that already exists. And so when I was like trying to like do stuff that felt similar, it just didn't feel right to me. And so I've kind of gone in the exact opposite direction lately, where it's like I'm still very clean with like my lines, but with color use and contrast and palettes, I've been a little bit more confident lately. Maybe even 6 months ago, having the background of the skybox with Jamie not kind of live in the same saturation level as the font on top of it would have really, like, I wouldn't have been confident in putting something like that forward. But now it's like, I'm getting to a place where I do want it to stand out a little bit, and I am feeling a little bit more like I said, bold to try stuff like that.
I think that's so cool. And it shows, I think, for one, that you're progressing as an artist and a designer when you feel comfortable to be able to take those risks. And you can see that it clearly paid off here with the yellow and the blue. You have these high contrast colors. And then you have like this really kind of intense, moody background with her pose and everything. Like it's all just working so well together.
I appreciate it. And where I've been playing around, like if I feel like my colors are too solid, that's like definitely like a criticism I have of myself, is like I really stayed away from like gradients for a very long time. And because I genuinely love like the way like a clean solid color looks. But one thing I've been doing to just like encourage myself to try different stuff is like I've been using gradients lately to like give that solid color a little bit of like edge, so to speak. So I might make a gradient. Let's see, we'll do like a new layer, and this always makes me feel super smart. And then we'll hopefully, did that just come out as a solid color?
It looks like very slightly gradient.
It is very slightly, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's because of your foreground and background colors are like set to almost the same color, it looks like.
Yeah, hold on, let me. What's up? I think there's something's not letting me select it. I'm worried that there's like a little option up here. It seems to select a different layer. I wonder if it's popping up on my second screen. That's why. This was over on my other screen, and I'm clicking around like
there we
crazy. Go. Okay, good. So yeah, I might go. Maybe I'll go to that blue from before. Something along those lines. Okay, cool. Did it set the? Didn't do that. No.
I think you might have to wait, is it?
New layer, and then just gradient.
Redraw.
That way. Yeah. There we go. Cool. And then I might add master selection, layer mask that, and then I'll play around with different blending modes and just see like, okay, like what is tolerable here for me as somebody who likes a solid color. And we might play around with the opacity like a little bit. Digging in that one, but we'll duplicate this layer and I'll do a different gradient. Maybe
Oh yeah, I dig that.
yeah, I'm having fun with it. And then maybe I don't want the black for that, but I want that off-white color again, and then we'll change the blending mode. There's never enough screen.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, and then when I do color, you kind of get this sort of gentler hue a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because it's like the sunset is spilling onto it.
Yeah. It's a very generous read. But yeah, this is working for me. And then I'll export it and then get it ready for social. And that's really like, I'll do this and I'll go through a ton of photos, just like the presentation I did at the start where I had like all those different iterations, and I'll like look at them on my computer and I'll go, okay, these are the ones I think I'm gonna like the most. And then when I go to like post them on my phone, I'll always have like a different one that's my like absolute favorite.
Mm-hmm. And is there a reason that you do export rather than just like save as JPEG?
Because I need to, like, if I feel like I'm adding an extra step before posting, I'll think myself to death. Or it's like I'll keep second guessing myself. And one little tactic that I've had lately has been to wait from the time I think that I'm done to like maybe 6 hours afterwards before posting, because I'll like sit on it a little bit. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but like towards the end of a project, I'm so eager to like move on to the next thing that like that's when I start like kind of rushing like a little bit and cutting corners. So if I like sit for 6 hours or maybe wait until the next day and revisit it, like those tiny little tweaks that may take it to a place that's a little bit more efficient is like exactly what it needed.
Definitely. Yeah. I for sure can relate to that.
But let's do that same exercise with another photo. I took this over the summer. I had the privilege of being asked to be the principal photographer for the Rochester City Drag Queen calendar for this year.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was really, really, really special. And it was, right on the forefront of all the craziness that's going on right now. And it was, like I said, it was a real privilege for me because it was a community that I really had not had much access to before. And so being invited, to come visit for a little while was really, really special and super insightful. And one of the key takeaways I learned was it really is such a community of selflessness. So I did 13 portraits, and every queen came with like an entourage of people who were more than happy to sacrifice hours of their day at a time to help the one person who I was taking a photo of get ready and feel confident and talk them up and help them get their wardrobe on. And that's something that's really, really moving to me. It was completely like the most selfless thing I'd ever seen. Like usually when I do portrait photography, it might just be the subject and that's it, but never this like communal, lifting each other up for something that they weren't even in. It was really, really special. So I would love to do the same sort of exercise. This photo is one I've already edited, but it can be fun to kind of pop in and see if I can't frame it in the same style as what we were doing before.
Voodoo Val wants to know, what was the name of the group you worked with for this?
It's the Queens of Rochester.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really incredible. A real privilege to be able to do something like that and be trusted with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really, really something. Like I'll never forget it.
it sounds amazing.
And so we'll duplicate this same sort of template, and then actually it's cool. But yeah, like so remember when I was like sometimes just like how it
Mm,
randomly like imports stuff, you're like, I may have played with this. Like if I had just like copy pasted it and had it framed in myself, I may have never landed on this. And then like I'll just go, oh, like this works for me completely like on its own. Like I really don't have much more
yeah,
to add to that. And I think as an emerging artist, I had to at some point kind of surrender myself to like the randomness that occurs, like, and you end up taking way less ownership for the work that you create. But like I really like a lot of times, especially on photo shoots, I just feel like I'm this person who just so happens to have a camera and press the button at the right time, but all the elements that make the photograph special have close to nothing to do with me. This model in particular, like she brought all of this energy to everything, and her friends and who would come to support her during the shoot, like they did all the work. I literally just like pointed and clicked, and then in the editing, I couldn't have messed this photo up because of everything
right.
that she had done. And so it's tough because you want to like feel like this genius who like this was like my vision from start to finish, and that's just not how I feel about my own work at all. Like it just kind of happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the way that you're looking at that. I think that's really cool. And the way this came in framed like that looks so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm tempted to just see like what would my logo look like in the top, but like sometimes it's like, okay, like, this just kind of works. Why mess with this? So I'm just gonna export, and that's definitely getting posted today.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love like the expression, like the medium is the message. Like I know that like what we do as professional creatives can get kind of snooty, and so
Yeah.
some people will kind of like opine like, oh, everybody has a phone and that's where everybody's looking at stuff. And for me it's if that's where impressions are being served, like that's no less or inherently like no worse than a big movie screen or an art gallery. Like if that's that people are being delivered art at all is like a great thing. And so it can make it tough. Like as somebody who has the privilege of editing on two very large monitors, like sometimes you're like, this looks perfect. And then when you see it on a phone, it's like, oh, it didn't translate.
Right.
But optimizing like to the medium, it just takes, a little bit of a different approach. And I think it can be done for sure. Like there's no reason why work is any less compelling on a phone than it is in any other medium.
Absolutely. Cece asked if you can show the contrast to the original photo. I don't know if they're talking about framing wise or
Oh, before I edit it? Yeah,
yeah,
I can show
maybe
you
with
what it looked like
editing.
beforehand. Yeah, so this was the original photo.
Ah, wow. And let's see the after again. Wow.
Yeah, I really do love having like playing around with like the haziness of a photo,
Yeah.
and kind of making things look like they were taken on Polaroid. So like Rochester is the home of Kodak, and so we have
Oh,
like a
right.
long history with photography and whatnot. And the Rochester Institute of Technology has like a really awesome school for photography as well. And there's like this throwback culture happening now with making photos look vintage. And I don't think that that's necessarily new. Like I actually think that that's probably, like, if I'm remembering correctly, that's what made Instagram kind of pop at the time, was like those filters were all retro filters. And so I
Right.
think that there's like an inherent appreciation for photos that look a little bit older. And so like I love playing around in that space.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's a photo I took from a frame. I was trying to like get a picture, so I like launched a new hat, and I was trying to get a picture of the logo, and I was sweating to death. And I was like, I cannot post a photo of my stupid big sweaty head and try to like, I don't know, demonstrate a hat to anybody. And so I like wiped my face, and then I was going back through the frames. I was like, I don't know what it is, but this frame just speaks to me. And so it's one that I'm eager to play around with a little bit and try to recapture some of the vibe that day. Like I love playing around with the highlights here and kind of adding a little bit of like a hue to it and just seeing like, well, what comes of this? But yeah, I was sweating to death.
When did you take the photo, did you say?
This was over the summer, but the funny thing about me is like the weather doesn't matter. I will sweat bullets just because I'm sitting around, like I'm thinking too hard. So this one, like I was all by myself. It was super hot. I was trying to position the camera on the tripod and then take photos like myself, and it was an endeavor. And I was so nervous that because I was like in this weird back alley that I know I wasn't supposed to be in, and so like I'm gonna get arrested for like having like this like mounted thing on a tripod. So I was like trying to rush, and yeah, like sometimes within that own chaos, like I was saying before, like just the spontaneity of what you're doing can kind of produce a single frame that at least you find thought-provoking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's when some of these like beautiful in-between moments happen.
Yeah. And like I really do value, like I feel like studio photographers, because they can control all the variables or more of them, are so good at saying like, we're going to get a shot of this, and this, and it's going to be exactly that. Like they walk in knowing what they're going to walk out with, and I am like awestruck by it. It's just so antithetical to like how I approach like photography. Like I've done studio photography before, but I really just love like, hey, we're out here and like let's just take candids and see like just see what happens. And I think that those moments are the ones are that speak to me more often than not.
Totally.
Do you shoot mostly in studio, or are you out and about in the streets?
Always out and about, never in studio. I did some studio work in college and I thought I liked it. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to go into fashion photography and do studio. And then that quickly changed because, as we were talking about earlier, being a disorganized, all over the place artist personality type, I don't like having everything to have to be a certain way. You know, I like to have these spontaneous moments where maybe the sun is causing the lighting and then I have my little portable light, or there's no light, or, you know, having these beautiful things just happen spontaneously.
Yeah, no, that's right where I'm at as well. And that's why I love doing fashion photography. I just like doing the lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
And it can be tough, like to have a client trust you enough to say, hey, we're going to send you these clothes that were really expensive, and we're going to trust you to just go out and come back with shots that, you are experimenting the entire time with. Like that's
right.
That's really, really tough. And like I've definitely had shoots before where it's like, I'm going to try some new settings today on this live shoot with my camera and just see what happens. And then I'm going through and it's like, oh my goodness, like I didn't set like my f-stop to the right thing, or like my shutter speed correctly. And now everything's like just a little bit off, and it's like, man, I'm gonna have to go back out and do this again tomorrow and hope that nobody finds out because I was irresponsible and wanted to do some wild shit.
I know, I've definitely had that happen too, where I'm like, oh my God, why?
But it pays, but when it pays off, it pays off, it super pays off.
So true.
Yeah, so we're gonna do the same thing here again, and I don't think I'm going to get lucky twice and just have it frame itself wonderfully. But yeah, I literally can do this exercise for hours. Oh yeah, this is much smaller than the other one, so that makes sense. And we're going to disable the soft light blend, and I'm going to.
Val
I don't know
asked,
if you pop. Oh yes, please.
What do you do if a client does not like what you've done with the products that they sent you, especially if the product is perishable, like food?
That's a great question. I think as contractors, after a while, you start sort of attracting clients who are similar to you just by virtue of your approach. And I know that like for me, like I'm going to be me wherever I go. And so I'm at this point, like I'm pretty good at kind of filtering out just by like natural course of conversation clients that are a little bit more rigid. Like I just know like right away, and they know right away as well, where it's like, appreciate what you do. we just, like we just can't, like for it, like you said, maybe what we have is perishable and there is no tomorrow. You have to get this done right now. And that's not to say that I couldn't do that, but the clients that are more rigid like that, I tend not to have too often. When I have had those though, I did a shoot with like a bespoke tailor brand, and I had no, as somebody who doesn't wear suits ever, I didn't realize how hyper specific that industry is. And so the client came with me on the shoot and was like, no, like these buttons have to be like this, and this pocket has to be like that, and this has to be worn this way. And I could tell we were driving each other fucking crazy the whole time. But like the shoot really did turn out super well. And they were all things that I would have never known had the client not come with me. And they were extremely particular. So I think that we were able to kind of do both. And that was a client that I also did studio photography for as well. But some of that work, I have it in this album, is some of my absolute favorite of like all time. But yeah, this is actually turning out to be something that I enjoy. I do want to throw that little wave logo on here somewhere and see what's going on. Let's go to my libraries. And you can see like I have tons and tons and tons of little iterations of my logo, just because I find it so fun to just like come through and create.
Yeah, it's so cool.
See. Yeah, we'll play around with this wave again. So I'll do like a new layer. I think people who name their layers are so impressive.
I know. I don't get it.
Like I wish I could like in real time do that.
I know. And I've seen people work that way. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I could do that. And
I've read about it.
Yep.
You know what? No, I want to keep that 2-3 there.
Yeah, I always say 2 types of people in the world: those who name their layers while working and those who do not.
Yeah, that's working for me. But then sometimes I'm like, okay, like, is it too unbalanced? Like, is there too much text on one side? Like I always get worried about stuff like that. Like, you ever see those people who balance a bunch of like random shapes and they'll stack them up like super high? Like they'll have like a bowling ball on like a chair and then like a sofa on top of the chair on top of the bowling ball. That's how I feel about like what I'm doing with like logos and fonts sometimes, where it's like, this isn't, it's like asymmetrical balance, if that makes sense.
Yes. I know. And it's tough because sometimes you'll see something or create something that you really like, and then it doesn't quite work for other people or follow design principles and everything. And then you're like, but I love this and I want to make it this way.
No, so that's the good thing, because I am self-taught. Like if I don't know the design principle, I really could care less. Like if it speaks to me, it speaks to me. But the part where it's like, it's almost working, but I can't quite get it there. That's the stuff that breaks my heart, where it's like, it's right there. Like what, like, it's 2% off for me. Like, why can't I figure it out? Yeah. And I had a client over the summer who was such a boss. We were doing this shoot for a bunch of like vases. They were like really expensive, like houseware, like not appliances, but just like interior decorative stuff. And I was like really struggling to get the shot of like this candelabra in a way that did look funny. And just in the middle of the shoot, she goes like, I'm like, no, like, I'm just gonna walk away from this. And I was like, what? Like, you can do that? Like, you don't have to like sweat like yourself to death trying to like get this one thing perfect. And she told me afterwards, she's like, I've just granted myself the ability to just say no to things that are just a huge heavy lift. Like, I trust myself to find something as good that isn't as difficult to do. And she saved so much time that way. And I thought that was super impressive and very insightful. And whenever I've had those like pieces that almost come together but don't quite, and I spend 13 hours on it and it just never happens, it's almost always the next thing I throw into like the template that just happens to work perfectly. And it's like, oh, like, okay.
So
awesome.
True.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely relate to that.
So when did you start on your own?
As working as an artist, you mean, or?
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I mean, I've been kind of doing stuff on the side for, I guess, through college. But then I worked a corporate job. I was working as a graphic designer when I lived in LA for a couple of years, and then working as a graphic designer for a dental company. And that was finally when I actually just had a nightmare last night that I still worked there.
Oh my goodness.
It was bad, but I quit in 2018 and have been working for myself ever since. So
Congrats. That's amazing.
thanks.
When
Yeah.
did you start to feel like you had like a valid perspective in the space that you were working in? Like, did that happen right away, like fresh out of school, or
Hmm.
did you come out of school with one and then you were like, oh shoot, like maybe I should reconsider, and then had to redevelop it? What was that process like for you?
I think I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, definitely still it continues to get shaped all the time, but I think it was probably, I definitely did not come out of school feeling that I had a valid perspective or any, that I was kind of even stepping into the style that I wanted to do, or had figured myself out by any means. It wasn't until maybe like 2017, about a year before I quit my job, that I was doing a lot of street photography around LA and taking pictures of buildings, and then seeing how I could kind of play with them in Photoshop, and got into surrealism and kind of more of the moody, dark tones that I've become known for now, with the pops of bright color and like neon and stuff. I started playing with that, and that was when I kind of realized, this is so cool. This not only lights me up, but other people are interested in seeing it, and interested in what my idea is behind it, and then my inspiration as well. And I come from a background of being involved in nature. My parents are environmentalists, and so that kind of goes into my work. And that was when it really blossomed into me feeling like, yeah, this is who I am, this is my perspective, this is what I have to say through my art. So, but then it continues to get shaped all the time.
Yeah. No, it's funny how like the goalpost for us like kind of shifts like as soon as we're on like the 1 yard line. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like I'm close to that thing that I never thought I could do. I'm getting close to it now. Let me like completely reset what my objectives are. And I feel like in the last month, like I've like reset the goalpost for myself for like the very first time in a while. Like I've spent this whole time just creating stuff that literally like I love it before I post it. Like that's always been my
Yeah.
modus operandi, where it's like if I love it before I publish it and it goes live, like whatever the responses to it, I am almost indifferent to, because you can't really predict it. And I wouldn't want to be known for something I didn't love. Like, you ever hear that song Cherry Pie by Warrant? It's like
Yeah.
the national anthem for like newly divorced dads. Well, that
Yeah.
guy, the guy who sang that song, I mean, it became super famous. He's a one-hit wonder. He hated that song. Hated it. And
Wow.
that's like, he became known for this thing that he hated, and he had like all these other artistic endeavors that nobody was like, they're like, no, like I'm trying to hear Cherry Pie, like I don't want to hear your personal expression. So he was trapped by this creation that didn't come from an honest place. And I always think about that when I'm creating, where it's like, I would rather no one ever likes what I do, I never get picked up for it, or I don't get the partnerships that I'm aspiring towards, but I'm authentic to that like vision and making stuff that I really appreciate, as opposed to the opposite, where I come up with something I can't stand, and then that
Oh,
blows up, and now I'm beholden to that forever.
oh my God.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so recently, like my objective finally changed from making stuff that I love, and like my absolute goal is to have something or create stuff that people spend time with. Like I was thinking, like one of the melancholy truths of being a creative is that you always spend more time with your work than the audience does. And it's like, man, like I wish that somebody would just sit with this photo for the 19 hours that I sat with this
Yeah.
photo, to fully appreciate how awful it was to sit for 19 hours on this photo. And so to have something that somebody goes, hey, like I spent time with this, like there's a lot there, like there's enough in what you've done to be considered, I think is such a high mark. And I recently got asked to design a book cover, and I've never done that before.
Ah, that's
And
exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And I'm having fun with it. And it got me thinking, like, I've always loved fan movie posters because I think at their best, they take a certain element of the film and played it in a way that's interesting. So they have to be super concise, but also abstract at the same time,
Mm,
where it's like, oh, they're going to pull the top from Inception and then make it look really, really cool. Like, that's such a difficult thing to do because you have to demonstrate a deep understanding of the property that you're pulling from. And so I was like, I'm going to start doing that for things that like I know intimately well. And so 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to make a custom box art for Final Fantasy VII because I am a huge nerd and it's something like I've always wanted to do. And so I spent 2 weeks just like completely sweating. Like, no one asked me to do this, but I was like, I have to get this out. And so I finally did, and I posted it to like a Final Fantasy forum, like online,
mm-hmm.
and the fan base is passionate to say the least. And so it went completely unnoticed except for one comment, and it was, I hated this at first, but then I spent some time with it and I noticed, oh, you pulled X and Y from that level. And I just noticed that like the silhouette is this character who's super obscure. And I was like, that's the best feeling I think I've ever had creatively, where someone like just spent time to look at all the layers that goes into the
Yeah,
sort of work that you and I have the privilege of doing. It's like, man, if I can do that ever again in my whole life, like I'll be super thrilled.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Wow.
It's up on my Behance. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna make cover art and like box art and whatnot for like these properties that I love, and then add them to my Behance so that people can just download them. It's like a template. So like the Final Fantasy covers that I have up there literally could slip into like a jewel case from 1997 or like a PlayStation 5 case. So
Right.
yeah, I thought that was something that was, it's like a fun project because it's it's really tough. Like, I didn't really think about how hard it was until I sat down to do it, to like, out of this giant property that people love for a million different reasons, to pull one thing out of there that speaks to everybody instantly, but that isn't also obvious, and then make that look interesting. You're like doing like this insane balancing act of like 19 different things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You spend so much time with it on your own. And then,
Yeah. And then
yeah.
putting it in front of like the fan base that knows it so well.
Yep. Yeah, Val says, I resonate with this so much. If you could only see this painting the way I see it after painting a sketch for 5 days, you would love it.
Yeah, and I think where I differ from that is like, I don't even care what people come away from it with. Like, just to have somebody spend the time to think about something that I've done. Again, like as I said at the top, there's so much content just constantly being
Yes.
fed to us. And for somebody to grab something that I've done and have it speak to them when they could spend their time with anything is so flattering to me. And so even if they pull from it things that I didn't intend, or get a completely different meaning from it than what I thought somebody would, that they spent the time is that's deeply flattering to me.
Yes, I love it.
Like I was reading that this father and son back in the 80s, they remade the original Indiana Jones together as like a father-son project. They shot it scene for scene, shot for shot, over the course of like 12 years. And I was thinking, like, if I was Steven Spielberg, which obviously I'm not, I wouldn't care about a single trophy on my shelf. Like, two people bonded over the course of a decade over this thing that I made, and they remade it themselves, like as an act of love. What other honor could you ever receive as a creative than somebody doing something like that?
Mm, yeah, that's so cool. This is an amazing photo, by the way. I love this.
Oh, thank you. So this guy Scott is a friend of me and my wife, and he's obnoxiously good looking. Actually, him and Sadiq are both like, and they're like this all the time. Like, they don't even know it. Although I think that they suspect that they're beautiful black men, but like there isn't an angle of them that like you can't like make work. And when they're like, because Scott will come around because he's a client of my wife's, like she's a personal trainer, and so he's around all the time just like being handsome, and it drives me crazy. Like, he looks handsome in gym clothes, he looks handsome in sweats, he looks handsome in like a suit. Like, he's just a beautiful man for no reason.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, I'm jealous in like the best way possible. I'm like awestruck.
Oh, some people are just like that. You're just like, wow, how do you look like that all the time?
Yeah. And he's also just like the coolest guy ever, super smooth. He's like almost like 45. You'd never know it. Like it's just
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm just
never would have guessed that.
yeah, like for this shoot, like I was like, hey Scott, can you point this way? And he goes, yeah, yeah. And that's all like that was all the thought it took. Like when I have like pictures of me, it is a production. Like and like if I'm taking photos of myself, I hate the photographer and the model at the same time. And Scott just like it's just instant constantly. I'm very very inspired.
Oh, so great.
I don't know why, but I love wires across skies. Like again, speaking to the segment of the audience that knows anime really well, there's like this visual trope of like anime TV shows of like trains, and then they all have like these wires like along the tracks. And so whenever I'm shooting someplace that like has those, like I always try to feature it as like a callback to that. And I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, but that's one of those things where it's like, man, like I'm
Mm.
so glad that we shot this where we did, because I think it just adds like a little bit of something to the like I just love the lines, like it's so random.
Yeah, it's cool because I think so many people try to get rid of stuff like that from photos, and I really love how much more interest this gives it and keeping it there.
Yeah, I love those imperfections of the scene. You know, if there's graffiti in the background, as long as it's not like completely obscene, I just try to keep it in. And then when I'm editing people, I never play around with people's appearance really. Like I won't touch up people's skin. I had a client ask me to make them look thinner and I said no.
Mm.
And then she took my photos and paid somebody else to do it.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, and it's like those sort of things where it's like I really like refuse. Like I think whatever you look like is what you look like. Like let's not
Yeah.
invalidate that as being like a beautiful thing. And so um I'm always really really mindful of that. And when I see like those like ads on Instagram for like the different ways, like Photoshop tutorials on how to make your skin look like, you know, plastic, it bothers me because I think it perpetuates this like really toxic sort of inclination that's out there, unfortunately, of people not feeling like they're enough just naturally.
Oh,
Um,
I know. I
yeah,
know. I totally agree with that. It's really bad. And then, I mean, combined with TikTok and all the things we see of,
and filters.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I like those textures. Now sometimes, like if I'm editing the texture of the background and like I crank it up because like I want the leaves to be more distinct, sometimes that will make your skin look more crunchy than it actually did that day. And so I might lower it just so that it's balanced in that respect. Like, am I
right.
communicating that well? Yeah,
Yep.
where it's like I wanted the detail from the background, but like I'm making you hyper detailed in a way now that's not true to what you look like that day. And so
Right.
I'll lower it for that like sort of circumstance. But I don't have the inclination to go in and like make somebody look different. Because
Yeah.
that can be pretty hurtful as well. Like I have the good fortune of like I really lean on my friends a lot of times to just go out and do shoots, and like I know how I would feel if somebody got rid of an imperfection or what they thought was an imperfection with my appearance. I'd be like, well, that's not like an imperfection to me. Like that's what I look like.
Right.
And so I wouldn't want to
Exactly.
inadvertently, do the same to somebody else.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Val
flatten
said, if
these.
it's done well, people don't know it's fake. Before you know it, people everywhere are feeling bad about not looking or about not looking like something that doesn't exist. Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like a huge, huge problem.
yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I don't want to add to somebody feeling that way, like ever. And when I do, like I did a live stream for somebody, and they had like a makeup artist, and they were like, "Hey, like, do you want us to touch you up before we go live for this interview?" I was like, "No, like this is what I look like." And then they're like, "Well, let's have like the makeup artist come over and chat with you real quick." And she came over, she goes, "Honey," and she just spent the next like half hour like making me more like balanced because I'm just blotchy.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah,
Wow.
but like it works for Morgan Freeman. Like why can't it work for me?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, these two look cool.
Yeah, that is so sweet.
Yeah, these two guys are awesome. I don't know if you spend a lot of time in InDesign, but like when you want to change the size of something, you have to like hold down shift so that it does it like proportionately. And so when I do that in Photoshop, it does the exact opposite effect. And it like I constantly have to like change my brain. It's like driving on the other side of the road.
Yep, I know. I used to use InDesign a lot more when I was doing graphic design for a company. I was in there all the time. And I remember the same thing, like,
Yeah.
I can't switch between these programs.
It's funny how that works out. I love InDesign. I could spend all day like making little editorials for myself.
I know, it's really fun.
It's the most fun. So yeah, we're gonna do the same thing again here, where I really do like this effect of like having the logo kind of off in the background, and I might like fade this at a gradient, but I'm gonna select the subjects again. And this was a logo I made after Adobe Max. I was like, I don't know if you went this past year out in
Yep.
LA, but
Yeah.
like, so I went as an ambassador for Adobe Express, and I fell in love with literally everybody who I met, in particular Phil Palin.
I
Who's
love
the love of my
him.
life.
He's
Yeah,
one of my good friends.
yeah, he's literally the love of my life. Like I
Yes.
left LA thinking like, oh, like he got away from me, and I'm never gonna find that again. Yeah, so I came up with like this logo, just literally just like express love, and then I made sure to put queso like from the I'm ditched to the shift like from the bottom of my heart, and then I was like, oh, I actually just like the way that this queso looks. So I've been using both, so it's like a reference to this as an ode to Phil.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm sad that we didn't get a chance to meet because I was with Phil a lot of the time. So,
oh my goodness, that's crazy of it. We didn't cross paths. It was, I don't know if you felt this way, but I was like overwhelmed with like the urge to create. And so I walked around LA by myself and just took photos. And it was both super not smart, but absolutely what I needed at the same time.
That's amazing.
You said that you took street photography in LA beforehand, so like you're pretty familiar with the area.
Yeah, my husband and I actually lived in downtown LA, like right down the street from where Max is. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, so that was really fun. And I lived in LA for 6 years, so got to know the area very well.
Yeah, that was my first time going out there.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Everyone's I love Phil in the chat.
Those are good.
Yeah, I actually met Phil like 5 years ago. Actually, it was the year 5 or 6 years now. The year I quit my job, I was just starting to do Instagram consulting with people, helping them increase their social media presence. And I did a WeWork class just for free and to kind of get my name out there. And Phil happened to be there. And then he hired me for one-on-one help. And we became friends immediately, and then kind of like lost touch a little over the years. And then when we saw each other at Max this past year, it was like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, he's amazing and super insightful. He did a stream for Express like right at the start of me becoming an ambassador, and as soon as his stream started and he was like going through his like presentation, I was like, oh my God, like this person has their shit together
yes,
in a way that was like both intimidating and inspiring. And so I really like all his work really resonated with me in that regard. And then when I was out in LA, he like gave me advice that was so helpful, because like I don't like posting a lot of pictures like of myself to my own Instagram account, and he's like, you gotta stop hiding behind your own branding and like put your face out there. And so like I don't know, it was something that must have been difficult for anybody to offer as advice, and he navigated it like perfectly, and it really resonated with me. He's like, I can tell that you're not very confident in this one regard, and it was like so like honest, and like he saw right through me, and I was like, oh, like Phil's got powers.
Yes.
like this person saw me. And wow. I've been indebted to him ever since. I couldn't have been more appreciative of somebody having enough compassion to offer advice like that to, at the time I was a complete stranger.
That is so great.
Yeah, he's the best. So I think if it'll let me select this 3. Do you have any workflow hacks that are like that if you describe them to somebody else, they would think that you were out of your mind?
That is a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my mind. I have to dig into that one a little bit. Do you?
Yeah. So my wife thinks I'm like a sociopath, like on the low, because I listen to the same song on repeat for hours, like when I'm working, because it helps me like not realize how much time has passed, because I'll get anxious about doing like the next thing. And it's like and it also like sets the vibe. Like I'm the type of person where it's like once I find a song that's in the mood of like the work that I'm trying to do, if I lose that, I'll go searching for it again and be in like a YouTube rabbit hole for 9 hours.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, like I've found something that works. I need to not be stressed out about how much time is passing. I will literally play the song on loop nonstop, and I'll do it for 9 hours straight, like while I'm working at the computer. And that's like, it's super weird, but it helps me focus like really, really well.
I'm gonna have to try that. I have never done that. That's very interesting.
How do we feel about this yellow on white? Because I feel like we could do differently.
Val said, I'm a repeat song listener. I didn't realize that everyone does not do that.
We're vibing today. No,
yes.
I have really bad like adult ADHD. And so
Same.
like I've had it like my whole life. And so, like you learn ways to like cope and like optimize your time. So like you have like these little rituals that like make you more efficient. And so like I've gotten like it down pat. Like I know how to trick myself into doing focused work for 8 hours straight, but it's been like a pretty difficult process to get there. But now that I have it, it's something that I super value. So to people who are still kind of navigating those waters where it's like a nebulous thing, like just keep tweaking, and however out there it sounds, like if it helps you get the work done, that's enough. Like I'm here to validate different approaches and different styles, and that doesn't mean just the end result of the work, but like how we get there itself. Like whatever it takes for you to create in the way that you know is best for you, I think is not only valid but should be celebrated. Like if you've figured that out, like that's something that we should applaud.
Yeah. I mean, that's so good, because that's something that I am definitely still working on.
Yeah, it's tough, I think. But so you mentioned that ADHD is something that you also are like coping with as well as like a creative. Yeah. So like I don't know if you feel this way, but like my experience is like I have to be passionate about the work that I'm doing. Otherwise, like it's really difficult. Like I'll drag my feet to getting it done. But if I am passionate, it's like the best thing ever, because it doesn't feel like 9 hours of work. It feels like a privilege to be able to do the thing that I'm doing. And so it helps kind of filter out the clients. Like somebody asked before, like, what if you have a client that's like X and Y? It kind of helps me navigate away from those clients, because they're usually the ones that put stuff in front of me that just sounds like not appealing to me. Not that it's not fun, it's just not necessarily what makes me passionate.
Right.
But when I do have the opportunity to do something that I'm passionate about, like the stream or the stuff I'm doing with Express, it's like the greatest professional privilege in the world to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I could not agree more. Anytime I'm doing admin things, I'm dragging my feet the whole time. When I'm creating, it's fine. So
Girl.
But we only have a few minutes left, with like 3 minutes. Is there anything you want to show us before we wrap up here?
No, I think that we got some fun, creative. I'll pull it up here, but we started with this frame with Jamie, and I like it a lot. But I actually think as we designed like away from it, that we got to something that was a little bit more concise. And so that's kind of the balance that I'm always playing with myself, is like, am I adding more layers for the sake of adding more layers, or can I be a little bit more focused with this? And sometimes I'll spend like we talked about before, I'll spend hours on the thing that's almost there, and then once I step away from that, then I'll discover the thing that is there. And I think that I love this photo of Jamie, but the three branded things that we got to afterwards, I just think have a little bit more of the simplicity and the congruency that I was hoping to derive from this stream. And so
Yes.
this is really like kind of like a microcosm of what my creative process looks like. And I really appreciate the opportunity and the platform that Adobe's offered me to express it and to, you know, validate me as a creative. Like it's, you know, as a female professional creative in a very white male homogenous space, and as a
Yep.
black male creative in the space that's, you know, the exact same. Any opportunity to say like, no, like I do have a valid perspective and approach in this space, even if the portfolio isn't with partnerships that come a little bit easier to people who are different than us. I think is something that's really, really huge, and because Adobe does not have to put me from Rochester on their live stream, and so I
Right.
couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah. Well, it's been such an honor having you here today. And I love your perspective on everything and just hearing your thoughts on that and our point of view and our perspective that we put out into the world as artists is valid, no matter who you are and what your background is and where you're coming from. I think it's so wonderful that Adobe Live gives us the opportunity to share and create with people all around the world. So I love that. And Toren, it was wonderful working with you today and learning from
Likewise, thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to nominate someone if you have a recommendation to see here on Adobe Live. You can do that in the little chat tab. And stay tuned for Annika's new show about branding basics, a show focused on helping you with your branding. Very important, as we learned today about branding. So thank you everyone again for joining us, and we will see you next time here on Adobe Live. Take care and have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.